Today, ladies and gentlemen, John is with us and we have the honour of listening to his budget for Brexit. Ladies and gentlemen, John Redwood.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by reciprocating some of those fine words to our chairman himself. I've known Barry Legg for many years as Member of Parliament and as chairman of the Bruges Group. He too has been completely consistent in wishing to recreate an independent United Kingdom. He was always a strong critic of transfer of power and bad policy to the EU as a Member of Parliament. He's given much of his time and talent to the cause through the Bruges Group, so can we also remember that? I'm not here to provide a gloss on the other excellent speakers, but I must just say that I don't think it's a good idea for us to badmouth the Prime Minister. We have a few more days of crucial negotiation and discussion and parliamentary vote. And I'd just like you to know that my task of helping colleagues of like mind to get us out on the 29th of March is going to be a lot easier if the government agrees with us than if the government doesn't agree with us. So I would urge you all to understand that we're engaged in a mighty struggle for our country's freedom and a mighty struggle for our democracy, because this Parliament has to understand what the people voted for. And this Parliament should not let them down. And I want our Prime Minister to be on the right side of that argument. And I'm trying to influence her right up to the final conclusion. And my message to Theresa May today is very simple, and it's the same message I've been giving her for 2 years, 9 months. Take this country out on the 29th of March with no withdrawal agreement. Take that jet to Brussels as soon as possible and table a free trade agreement and say that we, the United Kingdom, are ready to discuss and debate a proper free trade agreement. We have drafted one, it is ready. And if the EU would but say yes to talks on that free trade agreement, we not only leave on the 29th of March with no further restrictions, laws, powers of the European Court of Justice, but we leave not having to impose tariffs or other barriers or having them imposed against us on our EU trade under the GATT, as we've heard. That surely is a dignified and great outcome for a great cause, and it should unite sensible Remain voters with all Leave voters, because Remain voters say they fear damage to our trade. Here is a way, Prime Minister, to reassure them about our trade and to give to the majority of the British people what we voted for, our own democracy, our own independence. That Brexit budget, yes, I would like it to be given as soon as possible. But we are told, if we believe the stories in the press, that we won't get it until after we have left. But we need a Brexit bonus budget. We need a budget anyway to encourage more growth in our country. I hope the Treasury has observed that growth is slowing worldwide. I hope the Treasury has observed that the OECD and the EU both think Germany will grow less quickly than the United Kingdom in the current year, despite Brexit. And I hope they've understood that neither are going to grow fast enough, because on both sides of the channel, and indeed around much of the free world, they've been following too restrictive a policy which is doing damage to our economies and needlessly slowing them. There is no great inflation spectre or threat, so now is the time for that Brexit bonus. Now is the time to ease some of the burdens on our public services with sensible value for money increases in spending. I think particularly of schools, I think particularly of police and the battle against gangland crime and knife crime. I think about social care and the need to make sure that we have the best possible care for all those who need it in their older age. This does need a bit more money. And yes, we need some tax cuts to promote more growth. The Chancellor should look first at the damage his predecessor, Mr. Osborne, did to our property market with his huge tax hit against buy-to-let and his tax hit against people moving property. It is not a good idea to overtax movement, because it means that some people live in properties bigger than they really need because they don't want to pay the extra bill on trading down, and other people can't afford to trade up when they do need more property because the government snatches a load of money from them every time they undertake a property transaction. So my first budget tax measure would be to take stamp duties back where they have been increased to the rate they were at before the George Osborne attack upon us. The second tax change I would make would be to reverse one that Philip Hammond himself made in 2017. I think he launched a needless and unwarranted attack upon our motor industry. And his decision to impose much higher vehicle excise duties, particularly on quite expensive diesels, was as if he had lasered in for an attack upon one of our leading domestic motor manufacturers, Jaguar Land Rover, who had just completed a massive and expensive investment program in ensuring most of its vehicles sold were diesels with clean diesel engines under the rules at the request of the government. And then suddenly, Mr. Hammond and some of his colleagues in government have decided that modern clean diesels are a bad idea and he wishes to tax them off the road and to prevent them being made in our factories, and that was a needless attack. We have seen a 25% fall in diesel car output and sales in the United Kingdom since that tax attack was launched, aided and abetted as it was by a squeeze on car loans from the Bank of England. I would reverse that, and I would say that our car industry should not be taxed off the road, and I would add additional measures for the car industry. I would announce that from the 30th of March, our new tariff schedule, which we will set, will have zero tariffs on imported components for industry from wherever they might come. So far from making it dearer to have a German or a French component, I would make it cheaper to have a Chinese and an American component so that our industry was more competitive and could choose which was best. I come next to VAT, because for years we have had to either put VAT up or keep it where it is, and we've had to extend the range of products that attract VAT because this is a truly European tax. And although successive chancellors have not wanted to tell you this, there are measures they cannot take on VAT because they're not allowed to take it off certain products and they're not allowed to cut it beyond a certain limit. And I would like us to have a thorough overhaul of VAT once it becomes a United Kingdom rather than a European tax. I would begin by removing all VAT from all green products. Now I know the Green Party has gone wobbly on Europe and seems to want more of it rather than less, contrary to its previous argument. But even so, I would like them to join me in the lobby just once in a while and vote out all that VAT on boiler controls and insulation and all the other things which you need to cut your heating bill and to live a better life. I would then go on to make a much bigger reduction in VAT to boost living standards and to tackle fuel poverty by abolishing all VAT on domestic fuel. I think this is a needless and bad tax, and that it would be very welcome to all those on lower incomes who spend proportionately much more of their income on VAT. I would then wish to see cuts to our business taxes led by a major cut to business rates. It is more difficult for the high street retailer to compete against the online retailer, and quite often now the rates are as large or even larger than the rent. The rents are giving ground because it's so competitive and the landlords are having to accept the lower rents are the only way to keep a tenant. But the government is not giving ground other than for very small businesses, and it is time we made a major reduction in our business rates, and the Brexit bonus would enable us to afford to do just that. I would also like to see us take down those capital taxes that are clearly above the level which optimises or maximises the revenue. And I think if we had both lower stamp duties and lower capital gains taxes, far from it being a cost or a charge on the Brexit bonus, we would end up collecting more. I trust the Treasury reads its own figures, although I sometimes wonder. Sometimes I feel I'm about the only person in Parliament who reads Treasury figures at all. But the recent figures do show yet another 1 billion shortfall on stamp duties, because once again the Treasury makes the mistake of thinking that if you put a very high rate on, you collect more money, whereas on an avoidable tax, a legally avoidable tax like stamp duty, you make everybody miserable and you collect a lot less duty yourself. So there are a few ideas for a Brexit budget, but we have to get there, and that means a difficult few days ahead. Now, the choice before Parliament this week, to me, is an extremely easy one to make, because the choice comes down quite simply to either having a no-deal Brexit or having a no-Brexit deal. And I am voting for Brexit. But I also wish to change the description, because the no-deal Brexit I want is not a no-deal Brexit at all. That is a deliberate misnomer by the forces of Remain and by some in the government who should know better. It will be a multi-deal Brexit. It will be a free trade deal with lots of other countries Brexit. It will be an aviation agreement with Europe Brexit. It will be a haulage agreement with Europe Brexit. It will be a borders arrangement with Europe and a mutual citizens arrangement with Europe Brexit. There will be all kinds of agreements. But let me just remind the government of one simple principle of negotiating. If the other side think you are weak and are going to give in, they don't offer you anything. If you are strong and say, you know what, I don't need an agreement, all sorts of things are offered. Now, we have enough agreements on the table to leave knowing that we will still trade. We have enough agreements to know that the trucks will flow quite easily through Calais and Dover after the event. We know that the planes will turn up from Frankfurt and Paris here, and that our planes will be allowed into Paris and Frankfurt. That much is agreed. But I can assure the Prime Minister that once the EU thinks we are definitely leaving without signing that awful withdrawal agreement, lots of other agreements will be rushed onto the table. They have a lot of risk. The EU has a lot at risk. They have a mighty surplus with us. They sell us far more than we sell them. They do want to carry on selling as much as possible. But they're very good negotiators. They have decided to hang tough. We have decided to make concessions, and the only thing that could happen next if we carried on with the withdrawal agreement route is they will repeat the same medicine and they'll demand concession after concession. If we sign the withdrawal agreement, they'd be after the fish. They'd be after further controls over our laws. They'd be after keeping us in the customs union. Of course they would. Why wouldn't they? Because they'd far rather have a Britain subject to their rules, paying them money, than a great independent democracy trading freely with many parts of the world and prepared to trade with them on sensible terms as well. Ladies and gentlemen, our vision from Brexit is the vision of an independent country. Our vision for Brexit is to save our democracy. Our vision for Brexit is for a more prosperous economy. Our vision for a Brexit budget is to grow our economy much more fast by spending our own money at home and cutting our taxes so that our people can prosper more. So that's my vision for our future: a Brexit bonus budget, a better democracy and an independent country. And I have to now go and try and get my colleagues to agree with me.